to the land of the living. I need a second chance to go and find out what happened. I can't leave my mother out there all alone.
Your name does not appear in the book of death, which means you are not supposed to be dead yet. I cannot pass judgment on you because your name is neither in the book of life nor the book of death. You were killed by someone. I will grant your soul a second chance. You will be sent back to the world, but not into your body. Instead, your soul will roam the earth until you uncover the truth behind your death. If you fail your mission, you will be cast into the void, doomed to exist without form, while your body will return to the earth.
Are you trying to say that it wasn't an accident that killed me? You mean to say someone planned my death?
Once upon a time, there was a lady named Christabel. Christabel was 28 years old and still unmarried. She came from a very wealthy family and was the only child of her parents. Her father was a rich man who owned many businesses across town. However, Christabel was unaware that she had hidden enemies who were after her father's wealth. These enemies went as far as killing her father in his sleep using a pillow. Unaware of this, Christabel believed her father passed naturally in his sleep, and perhaps that he died a natural death. But something very terrible happened one Thursday afternoon. The sun was high up in the sky on the hot afternoon in a bustling city. Christabel walked out of a big supermarket carrying a little bag. She had parked her car across the road. She looked left and right and was about to cross to the other side of the road. Her phone, which she was holding in her other hand, started to ring. It was an unknown number calling. Since the road was clear and no car was coming, Christabel picked up the call and placed the phone on her ear. As she walked to cross over to the other side of the road, she heard the voice of people yelling. The person on the other end of the phone wasn't saying anything. Before Christabel could realize, a speeding vehicle knocked her down and drove off immediately. Christabel stood up, and everything she had bought from the supermarket had spilled on the tarred road. Her phone had been crushed by the driver who was in a haste to leave the scene. She wanted to really shout at him for knocking her down and speeding off. She noticed people were gathered at the place the accident just took place. She saw blood rolling down the road, while some women were crying. She walked closer to them to know what was going on. She looked and she saw herself lying down on the tarred road and not able to move. Christabel couldn't understand what was going on. She tried touching the women crying to tell them that she was right there, but her hands just went through them. Christabel got so confused and she began to cry. A car came and the people carried her body into the car. She wondered why she was separated from her body. She tried telling everyone that she was standing right there, but no one seemed to see her. Christabel began to hear some sounds. It felt like a wind was coming. When she turned, she was already out of the world. She couldn't see where the accident had happened. It felt like she was in a void and no one else was there. Someone appeared in front of her and she got startled. Who are you? Where am I? What happened to me? What is going on, please? Christabel asked, still shedding tears in confusion. I know you have so many questions, but I will only give you one answer. You are no longer among the living. The one who appeared said to her. No. I cannot be dead. I cannot die. I still have things to achieve. I still have a lot of things to do in the world of the living. Please take me back. Christabel pleaded with the one in white. Even if I let you go back to the world, there is no way you will make it. You will be sent out again, the one on white said. Are you trying to say that it wasn't an accident that killed me? You mean to say someone planned my death? Christabel asked in confusion. Like I said, something needs to be adjusted before you can go back to the land of the living. I will show you just one of the things you need to know and let you find the rest for yourself, the one on white said. Tell me what I need to do, please. I need to go back.
My mother is still alive and she needs me. I don't want her to cry so much. I'm her only child, please.
Christabel pleaded. The one in white pointed at a place and something began to play out. Christabel saw someone walking into her father's room at night. It was dark and Christabel couldn't see the face of the one who entered her father's room. She was still trying to know who it was when the person used a pillow to suffocate her father to death. As Christabel watched the scene, tears streamed down her cheeks. She had thought her father died a natural death. He had slept and never woke up. Who did that? Who did that to my father?
Who killed my father?
Christabel asked the one who had appeared to her, with tears still streaming down her cheeks. That is all I can show you. You have to find out who killed your father by yourself. You have a limited time to find out everything that has been going on behind your back and who wants you dead. Once your body is buried, there is no more going back to the land of the living, he said and disappeared.
Don't go, please. Just take me back to the land of the living. I need a second chance to go and find out what happened. I can't leave my mother out there all alone to go through all those pains. Please come back,
Christabel said with tears rolling down her cheeks. Christabel sat on the void, crying like a baby. Her father was a very wealthy philanthropist. People loved him so much. Everyone worshipped her too because she followed her father's footsteps. She wondered what the person who had killed her father would stand to gain from the death of her father. Her mother, on the other hand, has never said no to her father trying to help anyone. She was an angel who had come in form of a human to get married to her father. She was so loving, and also she wondered why anyone would want to make her a widow. Not only did they want to make her mother a widow, they also wanted to make her childless. The more Christabel thought about her parents, the more she cried deeply. Remember, you don't have much time. The clock is ticking, a voice said from the void.
But how do I do it? How do I know those who had just caused all this? Just give me a clue, please.
Christabel said out loud, but no one responded to her questions. There was a great calm in the void. She noticed that there was something placed on the floor of the void. She picked it up and it was an instruction. It read, "The spirit and the flesh cannot come in contact. You are free to go back to the world as a spirit making use of what you have in your left hand. When you get to the world of the living, let your instincts lead your path. Remember, the spirit can't come in contact with flesh." The instruction disappeared. Christabel didn't know what she was going to do and how she would appear to the world of the living. She remembered what she read earlier. Let your instincts lead your path. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in front of her mother. When she opened her eyes, she saw herself with her mother inside the hospital close to her lifeless body. Her mother was sobbing bitterly and begging the universe to take her too. She was dragging her and begging her to stand up. The nurses tried to hold and console her mother, who wouldn't stop crying bitterly. Christabel felt so sorry for her mother. She tried to hold and console her, but she couldn't. She tried to tell her that she was alright. She was right there and everything was going to be okay, but she couldn't hear or see her. Christabel couldn't help but join her mother in crying.
Mama, I promise to find those who are causing you all these pains. Those who killed both I and Papa, and I'll bring them to justice,
Christabel said to her mother Felicia, who couldn't hear a thing that she was saying. Remember, every minute counts, a voice said to Christabel as she stood inside the hospital with tears rolling down her cheeks. She tried wiping her tears, which didn't want to stop flowing. She went towards the door of the hospital. She turned and looked at her mother, who wouldn't just stop crying, and then disappeared. She appeared in front of her best friend Angela. She was just a roaming spirit seeking justice before coming back into the world. She just left her mother and didn't know why she appeared in her best friend's house. Angela was sitting on the couch inside her little sitting room. She looked like someone who was lost in thoughts. But something baffled Christabel. She had died just an hour ago, and her best friend was not crying about her death. So she wondered if maybe Angela wasn't aware that she had died from an accident. Christabel tried speaking to her. She made signs expecting she would see her because of the close bond they shared when she was alive. Many people mistook them for sisters because of the love her parents showered on Angela. Angela was an orphan, but her parents had made her feel the love her dead parents couldn't give her anymore. Christabel still had so many questions. Who had killed her? What did the person stand to gain? Who had killed her father? And why would someone kill a man so kind and generous? The one on white had told her she was going to be killed again if he sent her back to the world of the living. Angela closed her eyes as tears dropped down. When she opened it, she found herself inside her father's mansion. Some of her uncles were inside the mansion and looked angry, like they were waiting for someone. As she tried finding out what was going on, a car drove into the compound. Her mother, Felicia, came down from the car with tears streaming down her cheeks. She was just coming down from sending her daughter's body to the mortuary. She greeted her in-laws with tears, but instead of feeling pity for her, they called her a witch for killing her husband and only child in the space of 2 months. They told her that she was no longer welcomed in their brother's building before she kills all of them too. Felicia couldn't explain or understand what was going on. She had just lost her daughter, and here they were calling her a witch. She was so heartbroken and cried the more. Christabel tried defending her mother, but of course no one could hear her or see her. They were hurting her mother so much with their words. Felicia begged them to let her mourn her daughter before they come with their heart-piercing words which were so painful. We have arranged your bag here. You are not going into this building. You are leaving from here right now, one of Christabel's uncles said, to the shock of Felicia, who didn't believe her ears. She saw her bags already outside the building.
No. You can't do this to me. You cannot, please.
Felicia said in tears. Someone walked into the compound. It was a young lady with a little boy. Everyone stood and watched in surprise. I'm tired of living in poverty when my child's father is a billionaire. I have brought him to take possession of his father's mansion. After all, Mr. Williams has only a female child, the woman said with all seriousness. Felicia couldn't understand why everything was happening so fast. Her daughter just died. She was being thrown out of her husband's house, and now someone was claiming to be her late husband's side chick who even had a son for him. The more she thought about what was going on, the more she cried. I'm ready for a DNA test to prove that my son is the real child of Mr. Williams, the lady added. Felicia was in deep pains. She just picked up her bag and slowly walked out of the mansion. She didn't know where she was going to, but she just needed to leave. Christabel tried calling her mother back, telling her to fight for what belonged to her, but she was already emotionally broken. She only wished she could just die and end all the pains at once. Christabel called for the one in white to come and help her. She needed to console her mother. She needed to come back to life before her mother would take her own life. She needed some clues in finding the one who had killed her and her father. She needed to know if the little boy was really the seed of her father. No one answered her call. It seemed as though she was left all alone to figure it out by herself. Then the voice came to her again. Your time is ticking, Christabel. Christabel knew she couldn't follow her mother. She had a little time to figure out what was going on and how to come back to life. She wiped her tears, which were rolling down her cheeks. She closed her eyes and imagined where the accident scene had happened. When she appeared at the scene of the accident, Christabel tried finding out any clue that would lead to who had killed her, But unfortunately, there was none. Her heart was so heavy and she decided to locate where her body was kept and try to force her spirit into it. She searched for a while, but she couldn't locate her body. The one in white had abandoned her too. She was all alone and she didn't know what to do. The voice had been telling her that her time was ticking, but no one was willing to help her out. Christabel sat on a raised pavement in a junction and cried her eyes out. A young man was passing by and saw Christabel shedding tears. He felt so sorry for her and wondered why a pretty young lady was crying out in the open. He kept staring at Christabel, who was surprised that someone could see her.
You can see me?
Christabel asked the young man, wiping her tears. Of course I can see you. Who won't notice a beautiful lady? I only wonder why you are crying here and just shedding tears out in the open, the young man said to Christabel. Then he noticed something. Everyone who passed by was looking at him weirdly. Those who passed in pairs murmured something and pointed at him. He stopped the first young man to ask why they were looking at him weirdly, but he didn't stop. He stopped the second man and asked him if he could see the beautiful young lady in front of him. The second man told him no one was there. The young man looked at Christabel and his heart sank into his stomach. He took few steps back and ran away, not minding that Christabel kept begging him to come back. Christabel wondered why he was able to see her. She had tried to communicate with everyone else, but none of them seemed to notice her. She wondered what was so special about that young man. Then something occurred to Christabel. Maybe she would use the young man as a medium to reach out to her mother and tell her that she was still alive. But then, she didn't know how she was going to find the young man who had just run away after finding that she was a ghost. Christabel closed her eyes again and she appeared in front of her father's compound. The last place she wanted to see herself. She remembered how her mother had left the compound in bitter tears and she started crying again. Her father's siblings were all seated and making merriment. Christabel was surprised at what she saw. Earlier on, they looked like they were grieving over the mishaps.
That lady is an actress. Did you see the way she played her role so well? No one will ever even notice or believe that what she was saying is not true.
One of them said, My brother, the plan will work. It is a done deal. According to our late brother's will, everything he has is given to his only surviving child, which means the little boy will now be given the properties. Everything is now in our hands. Another said, We have to bury Christabel in 3 days' time so that we can seal the deal. The youngest uncle said, It now dawned on Christabel why the one in white had said she had no time. He had also told her that she was going to be killed again if she goes back into the world without finding out those who were responsible for her death. Her uncles had showed her nothing but love when she was alive. Her father had spent a lot of money on his siblings trying to get them established in their various endeavors. She would never believe that her loving uncles would ever think evil of her father, talk more of plotting it. That meant that they were the ones who had killed her father. But how they did it all was still a mystery, because none of them were staying with them in her father's house, and none of them was present the night her father died in his sleep. She still needed to know more. She wished she could say what they would hear. She would have asked them what their father did to them that would make them plot the death of their own brother. Christabel was going through so much pains than she had ever gone through her whole life. She just couldn't control the tears which kept streaming down her cheeks. She closed her eyes once again, and when she opened it, she was inside the mansion. The woman who had come in with her son was already seated in the house like a new queen. She ordered the maids around to her pleasure. Even her mother never treated the servants as trash. Christabel felt both sadness and anger at what the woman was doing, but she couldn't do anything about it. She wished she could make contact with flesh. she would have given that lady a dirty slap. Christabel wished her mother could hear her. She would have told her that it was a plan by her father's brothers to send her out of her home. She wished it was possible to tell her mother everything that was going on and help her ease her pains and worries. Then something occurred to Christabel. She remembered the young man whom she had seen in the particular junction she didn't know. She had just gone there to grieve without knowing someone was going to see her. He was her only option to reach out to her mother. But the big problem was, where was she going to find him? He ran away immediately after discovering she was a ghost. Christabel felt weak again and she started crying. She only wished she could get some help. Christabel didn't know what next to do. She then remembered her best friend again. It seemed like she was not yet aware of her death. She closed her eyes again, willing to appear in front of her best friend. But what she saw when she opened her eyes cut deep into her heart. The man she was supposed to get married to was in bed with another woman. Christabel couldn't behold the sight. She asked why the universe was so cruel to her and why everything was happening at the same time. If she was alive, she wouldn't have seen any of what was happening in front of her. She turned to leave, but something got her attention. She noticed that she was actually in her best friend's room. She had actually appeared in her best friend's house as she had desired when closing her eyes. Christabel shook her head, trying not to believe what she was seeing. She looked on the bed and saw that it was really her best friend Angela who was there with her fiancé. Christabel cried in deep pains. She would never have believed that her best friend was the one her fiancé was cheating on her with. Christabel's heart was bleeding with pains. Her best friend, who she took as her own sister, someone she was willing to take a bullet for, was on bed with her fiancé just a few hours after her death. Christabel was in so much pain and sobbing bitterly. She wished she could just disappear from the scene. It was only her mother who had shown her genuine love. When she closed her eyes again, she appeared in a place she didn't know. In tears, she wondered why she found herself there. She met the young man who she had seen earlier. He was just seated outside a little compound. Immediately he saw her, he ran into the house and closed the door. But Christabel appeared inside the room where he had run into. He begged Christabel to leave him alone and stop torturing him. He told her he was just an ordinary man who was struggling to survive. He never wished to see a ghost and upset her. Christabel told him she was not going to harm him. She told him she needed his help desperately. As she spoke, she kept crying. The young man suddenly started feeling so sorry for Christabel, who has not stopped crying ever since the first time he saw her. The door opened and someone walked in. "Timothy, who are you begging and asking not to harm you? Who are you talking to?" The young man who just entered asked, looking around the room. "The ghost I told you I saw now, and you were laughing at me. She's here inside this room. Can't you see her?" Timothy asked, pointing in a direction. A soft wind blew inside the room, and Simon ran out in fear. "You just scared my friends, like you scared me the last time. But I'm happy he's the one running now," Timothy said, laughing. Then he turned to look at Christabel, who wasn't finding what he was saying funny. She stood there, just staring at him with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Okay, I'm sorry, but I want to know, what happened to you? Why have you been shedding tears? And what do you need my help with?" Timothy asked. "My death was planned. I don't know who killed me, but a lot is going on. I can't explain everything at once. But I need you to reach out to my mother. I need you to tell her that those who did all these things will be brought to justice. I need you to also help me find evidence which I could use against those who had a hand in my death and that of my father. I know it's too much to ask from a stranger, but you're the only option I have left to achieve all these things.
My time here is limited, and if I don't solve all these problems, I'll be dead forever, and my mother will be all alone in this world to suffer,"
Christabel said with tears rolling down her cheeks. After Felicia was sent out of her husband's house by his siblings, she was so heartbroken and couldn't think clearly. She didn't know where she was going to go. In tears, she decided to go and stay with one of her friends who was very close. When she got there with her bag, she told her friend what had befallen her. Her friend sympathized with her, but she asked her to hold on while she called her husband and sought permission. After a while, her friend came back with a sad countenance. My husband said you cannot stay with us. He said his siblings will be coming and there will be no space to contain all of us. Please, accept my condolences and find another place," she said with a mocking face. Felicia was surprised. She knew that there were so many rooms in the building. She never believed that her friend wouldn't let her pass the night at her place. She was the only hope she had. She left her house with her bag and she kept crying. Felicia wondered why the universe was being so cruel to her. She didn't know what she had done to deserve so much pain. A thought came to Felicia. Maybe she could take roof in her husband's company. She took the little money she had on her and boarded a tricycle to her late husband's company. When she got there, she was denied access into the building. The gateman was new and he didn't know who Felicia was. The manager of the company was called. He came downstairs and told Felicia that the company was no longer her husband's. He told her that the company had already been sold. It was all like a dream to Felicia, and she almost fainted. She was caught by the gateman before she fell to the ground. Her heartbeat raced and she cried more. She wondered why everything was happening so fast and at the same time. She was asked to leave the company's premises by the manager. She begged to be given refuge, but her request was denied. She was taken out of the company by some security men. Felicia didn't know where else to go. She had no money to stay in a hotel. She had no private accounts. Her parents were already dead. She couldn't go back to her husband's village because they might still send her out. She was out of options and all she did was cry rivers of tears. Felicia decided it was best for her to end her life so all the pains would go away. She left her bag and tried crossing over to the other side of the road so she would be knocked down by a speeding vehicle. But as she crossed, vehicles all stood still. It was as if death rejected her. Even though it was a highway, all the cars slowed down as she crossed again for the second time. Felicia picked up her bag and kept walking with no destination, and she was crying bitterly. Back to Timothy. So let's say I want to help you. How will I find your mother? Do you think she'll believe all I said to her? Timothy asked Christabel as they were putting their plans together. I don't think your mother would believe me or understand if I try to explain it all to her. How do I tell her that someone killed her daughter and still killed her husband? I think it's best we find solutions to your problems. Let's find out who had killed you and bring them to justice first. But the question remains how we are going to do that, Timothy asked. Christabel was sober and didn't know the answer to the question Timothy had asked her. Then a thought came to her. We need an evidence that can send those who had done all this to prison. But first, you need to get closer to help me find out. I want you to apply for the job of a cook in my father's mansion. That is the only vacant space because I have been doing the cooking myself, Christabel suggested. But I can't cook so well. How can I cope? They will chase me out immediately, Timothy responded. Don't worry, I'll always guide you on what to do and how to cook, Christabel said, trying to reduce Timothy's anxiety. They both agreed, and Timothy was going to apply and start work the next day. It was already getting late, and Christabel was running out of time. In 2 days, she was going to be buried and would never get the opportunity to return back to the world. she disappeared from Timothy's room, and his friend Simon came back into the room. Do you think Christabel will meet up with time, or will she be buried before she exposes her killers? Watch out for the next episode and stay tuned.